Hey, this is Tyler C., and you're listening to the Nonsensory podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 30 of the Nonsensory podcast. I'm your host, Evan, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Joe. We've recently partnered with the good people at Gaming Access Weekly, and you can find our podcast along with all of their great content, editorials, reviews, and everything else at gamingaccessweekly.com. You can listen to us in audio form on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher. And if you'd like a little more visual stimulation, you can check us out on our YouTube page, like and subscribe, and click the bell to get notifications whenever we put out new content. You can also find us on Twitter at Nonsensory1, on Facebook at Nonsensory Podcast, and please come join us for our weekly Twitch stream Tuesday nights at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Finally, please support us on Patreon by going to patreon.com/nonsensorypod. We have 4 tiers of membership ranging from $1 to $20, and perks range from getting to vote in polls to getting to read a personal greeting at the start of our show. Shout out to Tyler. Our first patron. We love you. And with that all being said, let's get into the show. So to preface it, I'll let Joe tell you a little bit about the new stuff that we're doing with this episode.
So we've got a lot of new things going on. We're trying to experiment a little bit with camera angles and having a little bit of fun. And then we're and trying out something new. So bear with us as we try out this new format. Mm-hmm. But we hope it'll add quality eventually.
Yeah, it's not just for visuals. Basically, it's for us to kind of like alleviate some some of the heavy editing that we have to do on the back end after we record, because we basically just like record a raw footage of us and then have to go in after and do all this other stuff. So we're working our way towards like streamlining things so that we can get more content out in a timelier manner. So
yes.
So we hope you guys like it, and bear with us while we work out some kinks or whatever, and things are going to be good. So
I think what we're going to do this episode, we're kind of ad-libbing a little bit. We just want to have fun. We were dealing with all this other stuff and didn't really have time through the week to really build up a doc and other things. Mm-hmm. So we're just going to have a little bit of fun, kind of see where the conversation takes us.
Right. I think that we had talked about doing our games of the generation as kind of like a capstone to, this generation, being that the next generation is only a few weeks away now at this point, which is kind of crazy. Since we've been talking about it for so long now, that it's finally here is pretty exciting. So we figured we'd go through and say like what games we thought best embodied the generation, and maybe that they're not necessarily like games that we even played a ton, so much as like games that we think that are important to the generation, to gaming as a whole. And we also might get into a little bit of Better Call Saul discussion.
We'll see what happens.
We'll see
where this goes.
Yeah. That's kind of why it's ad-lib. We're kind of just gonna roll with it. So that being said, Joe, how have you been?
Have been having a little bit of a tough time. I actually so we went to go visit my mom and James' great grandma over the weekend. Mm-hmm. Last weekend. And when we left, Hazel met me at work and we took off. Did I tell you this story yet?
No, you didn't tell me the story.
Okay. So when we left, I actually was headed towards the turnpike, and right as I got to the ramp, the very last exit or the last driveway, a cop pulls out behind me, and I quick look like as I'm going up the ramp to the turnpike, I'm like looking in my mirror to look and see if the cop is still behind me.
Yeah.
And he went straight, and then I looked back ahead, and boom, I slam into the barrier, and I ride up the edge, and I thought we were going to go over into oncoming traffic.
So you almost Dukes of Hazzard your whole family is what you're trying to say.
Yeah, it was not good.
Oh man, that's what sucks about cops sometimes. Is like they make you nervous.
Yes.
Because you're like, I mean, obviously you shouldn't be doing the wrong thing, but like most of the time I'm doing
maybe a
something wrong. Like most of the time I'm probably speeding. So like when a cop just appears, you're like, is it me? Yeah. And then you kind of take your eyes off just to like take a look at them, and then stuff can happen. That sucks.
Well, I knocked the alignment out, and I blew the belts in the tire, and I had to, fortunately, I'm a mechanic, so I called my boss up, and I was like, I need you to open the shop up. I'm going to switch my tire out real quick, and then he helped me eyeball my alignment, and we just took off.
That's cool.
So we ended up leaving later than we wanted to. We got to the hotel at 11 o'clock, and then James was asleep from 6 basically the whole way till we got there. So he didn't fall back asleep until 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, he was probably just a little ball of energy, man.
It was,
and you were probably tired from the whole drive, so yeah.
It was not fun.
Yeah.
It was not fun. And Hazel and I kind of, because we started the weekend off that way, it was bickering, and it wasn't too great.
Yeah.
But that happens,
But you guys did have a good weekend though after that, yeah?
Yeah, we got to take Grandma out for gelato, and she got to. That's the second time she's ever seen him, and he's 3 years old. So
really,
yeah.
I didn't know that. I don't know. It's tough, man. When you have kids, you want everybody to be able to see them all the time, and just by nature, not everybody's going to get to see them all the time in equal amounts.
Especially Grandma, the older generation. You want him to get, the time is limited that they're going to get to hang out.
Yeah.
And you want him to develop that bond and get to spend time with her, so he'll remember her when she's gone.
Right.
And that, they, because I don't remember any of my great-grandparents. Do you remember any of your
great-grandparents? No.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. I have a weird family thing where most of my I was closer with my mom's side growing up, and we got to see them, and then I don't really have a whole lot of relationship with my dad's side, so
that's kind of the same here.
So I don't know, makes me sad. But no, it's good that you're making the attempt. That was one of the nice things about when I moved back here from California was I just wanted to spend time with my nieces and nephews. So
yeah.
I have a little bit of car related news,
yes.
in that I got a new car.
Yes.
And the entire way, it's weird because I signed the paperwork, but they had just gotten the car onto the lot the day before. It was somebody traded it in the day before.
Yeah.
And he showed it to me, and he told me this just got here. It's going to need we're going to have to put it through the shop and make sure that we change the brakes and the tires and all that stuff before it's sale ready. So, but I really liked it, so I was like, yeah, I'll sign the paperwork now, and then I'll come back and pick it up. And from that day, I was just so concerned that I was gonna total my car that I was trading in the it would be perfect, karmically perfect, that I would be yes, I found this great car and I want it. I'm getting rid of my old crappy car, and then I just crash my old crappy car and completely lose my trade in it or whatever. So the day that I was finally going to go pick up my car, which was right before a 10-hour shift that I had to work. So I worked late the night before, woke up early so that I could go meet these people at Open and pick up my new car. So I'm driving out to the dealership.
Oh, no.
And I have to go to the bathroom. So I pull into a Sheetz, which is a gas station, but it's, it's I'm trying to think of an analog for everybody to understand, but it's just a gas station. They serve food, but they also have bathrooms and stuff like that. So I knew that I could go.
Higher quality gas station food than you would normally expect.
Yeah. It's like if you threw McDonald's in a gas station or something like that.
Yeah.
So I needed to go, and I pull in to go to the bathroom, and I'm getting out of my car, and I open the door, and there's a lady that pulls into the spot that was next to me on my left, on my driver's side. And she pulls into the spot while my door's open and slams her brakes on and rings and lets out her horn. And I do this. I go, whoa. you know, because it scared me. It was loud. It scared me. And I was just like, geez, what almost just happened, you know? And so I close the door. She gets into the spot, and then I get out of the car to go in. And so I'm on the driver's side, so I'm on her passenger side when I get out, and her window's down. So I was like going to lean in to be like, hey, I'm sorry, or whatever. And the lady's just cursing me out in her car. And I can hear like, you know, and I'm like, what? And then she leans over and goes, you're miserable, aren't you? And I was like, excuse me? And she goes, you're miserable. And then she like gets out of her car, slams her door, and she goes, I saw you rolling your eyes at me and stuff like that. And I was just like, lady, you just scared me, dude. Like, that was just my reaction. I was startled. And she's just like, yeah, whatever. Sure it was. Yeah. And she's, and I'm like,
who's miserable?
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
I said that to her. I'm like, geez, you're the miserable one. And then I start walking in, and she's following me into the sheets. And I had to go, guys. like, you know what I'm talking about. So I have to go to the bathroom, and this lady, after I tried to be nice, is MFing me and following me into the sheets, where I'm just like, look, if you don't stop yelling at me, we're going to be in a mess. And so she follows me in, and she's just like, you know, giving me crap. And I turned around and I looked at her, and it's like 8:45 in the morning. And I turned around and I looked at her, and I was like, lady, it is far too early in the morning for you to suck this bad. And then I just walked into the bathroom. And so I'm sitting on the toilet in the sheets just going, what if this lady keys my car? Well, you know, and it was just like the weirdest way to start off the day. So yeah, that's my excitement for the week.
That is a whole lot. And like, wow, that is the most Karen-y thing I've heard in a long time.
It was super Karen-y. I don't know. I don't know what it seemed like, because I pulled into the parking lot, and there was like, the sheets is like, there's all the gas pumps kind of like are lined up in a row. And so she was trying to get through to go to the main store itself, but you had to go drive past the gas pumps to get to it. And they were so packed that she like couldn't get there. And she was like trying to speed through, and somebody pulled into the gas pump while she was trying to get through. So she had to like stop and like go around, and it probably upset her, and she was in a hurry. So she was already like a ball of piss and vinegar, you know, and just and then she just like unloaded on me. And I'm like,
that is very understanding of you to at least lay that out just now.
Yeah.
Like, I get it. Like, mornings can suck. And so that's pretty cool that you know,
I guess.
Yeah. Okay. So I have a little something before we get started with the show that I wanted to try while on camera. I got a couple of donuts.
Oh yeah. Tell me about these donuts, Joseph.
So Duncan now is doing a ghost pepper donut. Mm-hmm. Now, I talked to a lady yesterday because I have too much Duncan.
It's like it's like a regular stuff.
Yeah. Okay. But the lady was like, "Oh yeah, it's not really even as hot as like flaming Cheetos."
Okay.
So they're not hot, but I'm really intrigued what this is going to be like. So, shall we?
Yeah, let's try them out. So this is our first like actual food related piece of content. So let's try these out.
Sir.
Okay. Now
hold on. Let's get a good.
Gotta get a nice close up shot there. So it's like a pink tinted icing. Mm-hmm. It's got like these little they're like pink sprinkles as well. It looks like it would be like rose flavored or something like that.
Okay, rose flavored donut actually sounds pretty good.
Okay, so do we do the GMM thing and dink it and sink it?
Yes. Let's back to us. Right. Good sir.
Dink it,
sink it. Don't sue us. You know what? Ooh, there's a little bit. There's a heat.
Yeah. That's really strange. I like it. The heat is there too.
Yeah.
It's kind of
it's
kind of building.
yeah, the heat builds back up, and it's actually really good. The sweet heat. This is like the only thing. I'm not a bacon guy, but the only thing that can make this better is if they like put bacon sprinkles on it.
Oh man, that would be so good. All right, I'm gonna take another bite.
Here.
We'll get to it. Thank you, sir.
No problem.
So, I'm not the best with heat, so we'll see how I feel in a second. But yeah,
Okay.
that's good. I like that. That's pretty good.
So, recommend?
Yeah, as a thing to try, sure. And yeah, I think you're right. With like some sort of,
It needs
if it had bacon on it, I think that would be amazing. Actually,
it needs something. It's
sort
good.
of-
It's good, but it's not quite there.
you could balance the heat out with a little salt.
Very tasty though. I don't know that I would recommend it.
Yeah. That I will say that's one of the better donuts I've had from Dunkin' though.
Yes. Agreed.
Like cake wise, it's good. So what do we want to get into first, Joe? Do we want to do games of the generation?
This is a discussion that we can have.
Okay.
And hopefully we can come to an agreed game of the generation. So we'll go through and maybe lay out our case for what games have been the most influential and like reasoning, and we can argue it out and we'll see what we come to.
Okay.
What do you say?
Sure, yeah. Some of these might be more personal taste.
Okay.
But yeah, some of these are definitely going to be more personal taste from me. But there are some in there that I think are like overall just like these games were just hella important for the generation. So the first one that I have listed down is, I know is a personal choice because I put down Hollow Knight. Because it's just one of my favorite games of all time. And it just really showed like the power of indies, I think, to make something that like gave me more like joy and content than a full $60 game for like $20. And it was made by such a small team.
Yeah.
And they really just like, I'll say that the way that it relates to the overall generation is that it really, like, there were a bunch of like Metroidvania style revivals this generation, in terms of like indie 2D platformers that I think were some of the best games of the generation. And it was kind of like a trend, and it kind of brought those kind of games back as like a mainstay that you could like look to, like with stuff like Ori and the Blind Forest and Axiom Verge, and I'm trying to think of what else.
I mean, to be fair, I think Axiom Verge was probably before Hollow Knight.
Oh, it was for sure.
I mean, yeah, the castle, the Metroidvania. First of all, that term is too loose. Metroidvania.
Yeah.
But for sure, Hollow Knight like stands out above like a sea of Metroidvanias that have come out. It stands out as like, you know, first of all, like price point. We've talked about this before, this particular game, but like that just goes to show like how great it is. You know, the sheer level of content. Like they have like what 15 pieces of DLC that they just give you.
Yeah.
Like for price point alone, it's like,
yeah, I would say that I'm pointing to Hollow Knight as my favorite of these Metroidvania games that kind of were in a revival, but overall it just speaks to like over the course of this generation we've just got a bunch of great Metroidvanias. And
also they don't sacrifice any quality. Like it's like you said, the small team, and yet it like you would never know. Like this could very easily, like if they would have released it all together,
yeah,
as one thing, you'd have no idea that it's not like a AAA title.
Yeah,
You know what I
you
mean?
could
Like,
easily if I didn't know who made this game, you could easily tell me that like Konami decided to go back and made like another Castlevania kind of game,
Right.
And I'd believe you that it was, you know,
Absolutely.
And they did go back and make another Castlevania kind of game with a Bloodstained Symphony of the Night or whatever.
Which I still have to jump into that, but I've
Game
heard
Pass.
so much stuff about it. And like while you bring up Castlevania, I do want to start watching the series. I don't know if you've seen any of it.
I've heard great things about the series. Colin, any thoughts on the Castlevania series? You weebo. You haven't watched it yet?
No.
Oh man, maybe we should watch that for the show.
There's so many things to watch.
That's a good idea.
All right, we'll have
Yeah.
to put that on the on the docket. We'll have to
Yep. Well,
watch
there
Castlevania.
we will build a list of shows that you might want us to watch, and we'll put that up for our Patreon.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Patreon.com/nonsensorypod.
you can always vote in polls.
Yes.
That starts at the $1 level.
Yes. Yeah.
Yep, so.
Dollar access gets you dollar contributions get you access to voting in polls. That's my first one, Joe. What would you say is one of your games of the generation?
So we were talking about this a little bit before the show, but I think I could make a extremely strong case for Dark Souls in general, the Soulsborne series. Now I know that not all of them have been on this current generation.
Right. They did start on the previous generation, but
the Soulsborne, like how many Souls type games have come out since, and like just to single it out, like Dark Souls 3, I mean, it was talked about, and like, it's still talked about, but it was talked about very like just walking around, you'd hear people talking about this game. Like
Yeah.
I remember me and my brother went out for ramen when I was visiting him in Lancaster. That was 2 years ago, but we just went and sat down. Like, how often do you hear people talking about video games just randomly in a restaurant?
right.
And we sat down. We ordered a bowl of ramen. We're sitting there, and 2 tables back, like it was one of those things where you're trying not to be rude and like listen to the conversation, but you can hear they're talking about Dark Souls, and I'm like, all right, this is awesome. Like that's, and I mean, they were talking about the Switch and other things as well, but they were talking about Dark Souls 3 specifically, and like, you know, my brother was actually going to Thaddeus Stevens, that's like a technical college out that way, and he said, you know, like that's all you hear about all day, all the time from all
Really?
classmates is Dark Souls 3. Yeah. So, and then like the DLC and everything else. I mean, I think really you can make a very, very strong case just on how it influenced. I mean, Jedi Fallen Order is very Soulsy.
Yeah, I'm currently playing that, and it's so good. Like I talked to you about it a little bit before, and it's like baby's first Dark Souls, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Where like the difficulty and like the like unfair just like moments where like it wants you to suffer are not there, but like it takes so much from that game and incorporates it into a Star Wars thing, which to me speaks to how influential it's been, because like you don't just like take a Star Wars property and mold it around a certain type of game if you don't think that like this game will sell a bunch. Like,
Right.
Like they know that so many people love these. Otherwise, like, why would you make a game like a Star Wars game in a genre that people wouldn't play? You know that this is like popular and people love it.
And I know it's still FromSoft, but you have Sekiro, and then you have Ghost of Tsushima, and I mean, numerous other games that borrow bits and concepts from, you know, the bonfire save level up thing to the style of
Respawning enemies and
combat
stuff,
to the
yeah.
merciless. Like right now, since Dark Souls, like I think we had so there for a long time we had in gaming, it was like they wanted you to just be able to play the game. And like but there was an underserved community that they wanted the challenge.
Right.
Dark Souls served that challenge, and now we've gotten a sea of games that are like, you have to be hardcore gamer to play the game, or you know what I mean. You have to.
Yeah.
It's not handed to you like other games have just handed it to you. Like, anyone can play it. You can just play it.
And there will always be detractors of Dark Souls, but I have to say that I don't think that there's like a series that I've played that spans my group of friends and their tastes as like a unifying thing that we all agree is like really, really special. Like, I play a lot of shooters. One of my friends plays a lot of like platformers and more artsy games. One plays like a bunch of MOBAs like League and Warzone and stuff like that. And the other plays like a bunch of RPGs and like weeby anime stuff, and like, but we all come together and kind of like can appreciate like how magical Dark Souls is. And like, I don't think I've played a game more this generation than Bloodborne. I've played through Bloodborne 3 times this generation, and I think that like I keep coming back to it because it's just so well done.
That's a good point. I mean, I think even the detractors have to admit what the draw of the game is.
Mm-hmm.
The level of focus on combat. The like one of the things that like so John, our brother, I watched him play for a long time, and to me it was, it's just another game when I was just watching him play. But then like he would get into like, oh well, the movement is perfect, like you have to like, your iframes and everything else, and like the hitboxes are like, everything is, you play another game and like someone swings something next to you and you take damage, or you watch it like go through your head, and you know what I mean? It's like, I should have been hit or I shouldn't have been hit. And but it's like, no, it's perfect.
Yeah.
They spend so much time on making the combat so genuine and intricate. And I mean, yeah, like you can't just run up and spam a button and win. And like, you got to think,
right,
and react. And
another thing that I think was really cool is like, it's like, even if you're not somebody that's like super into games, if you go into if you just walk into a room and somebody's playing Dark Souls, and then like they just like stumble into a boss battle, and then they like walk through the fog door, and then there's some massive enemy, and then the music starts to swell, and then this thing's
so it just sucks you in.
Before I had even played these games, I showed up to a friend's house, and I was like, "What are you playing?" And he's like, "Oh, Dark Souls, dude. You don't know about Dark Souls?" And then like I was just sitting there watching it, and I just couldn't take my eyes off of it.
Exactly. It's one of the first games in a long time. Like, I know there's a whole thing around watching people play games now. I mean, we have a Twitch now, but like, it was the first game in a long time. Like, I grew up in a family of 7, so you always had to watch people play, and you're like, it's my turn. Come on, guys. Yeah. But like, it was the first game in a long time where I could sit there and watch and just like be content to just watch. Like, dude, this is so cool.
Well, also, just to jump off of that, the funny thing is that in that scenario, I'd be sitting there watching it like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then the guy would be like, oh yeah? Here, why don't you try? And I'd be like,
no,
absolutely not. Like, you can, I don't think I can do it. You go. So we had talked a little bit about this being a good discussion point. But we've recently, Joe recently, and I have been commenting on it, has been going at Resident Evil 2 remake.
Yes. Okay. So this is,
and we thought that it would bring up a good discussion about, does it qualify because it's a remake, or does the things that have changed in it make it enough of a different game, or just good enough as a piece of gaming media that it doesn't matter that it's kind of like tied to a previous release. So what do you think, Joe? What do you feel about it? Because on my side, I think that like they did, even if it is a remake of an old game, to like bring it back to a whole new generation of people, and to have them play it, and to like work out all the weird kinks that the original game has to make it more modern, and to kind of reinvigorate a franchise that was mostly just dying. And now they're making like they made RE2 remake, RE7, RE3 remake. Now they're making RE8. Like it's just like it's like Capcom is kind of
vivified.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think. So you brought up we were going over the list kind of briefly. We just mentioned a couple of possible titles that we bring up, and I said RE2, and then I stopped myself, and I said, I don't know if that can make the list. And then I said, kind of like, is that on your list? And you said, yeah, and I was like, well, can we really do that? Because it is a remake of a game.
Mm-hmm.
And the argument is that they did so much to it that it doesn't really have much in common with the original game.
No,
I don't think.
Unless you just go purely by setting or something like that. Other than that, though, it feels...
Setting, title, and that's really all that is the same.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they... So the camera angle, they actually made it, though, over the shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
So like in the old games, they created a lot of tension in a cheap way, if you ask me, because they would just make the camera like off in the corner of the room, and while you were over here, and then like just navigating was a chore.
Yeah, and you'd turn a corner, and they design a corner so that you'd turn the corner, and then it'd be like, oh, there's a guy right in front of me,
Yeah.
Versus like this, you kind of just like creep around, and things like exist in the map, and you just like stumble across them, and so like you might just like pop your head down a hallway and be like, oh god, like what is down there?
They do a very good job of building the tension in interesting ways. And so, but like so the camera is a massive change.
The shooting feels great.
The shooting is way different. You don't feel like a tank walking around. It feels pretty fluid. I'll say like the melee aspects of the combat make you feel, I don't know if it's intentional, but it makes you feel very helpless.
Oh yeah.
Which like it's kind of frustrating sometimes, because it's like, at least like let me like push them away, or like have a punch or something.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's like, oh, get away from me, like, so it kind of lends to it a little bit. I don't know.
They kind of leaned into, rather than giving you like an infinite knife, they were like, okay, well, this game, Resident Evil as a series is all about like kind of like resource management.
Yeah.
So like, let's make that your knife part of it too.
The knife breaking. That when I first saw that there was health on the knife, I was like, oh no. And that's on stream, so I'll have to pop those videos up on our YouTube. But like,
I really like,
that was a good, genuine reaction.
I really like also how, and this is just kind of more of an observation in general, because we just talked about Jedi as well, but in that game, it basically gives you a map, and it shows you like the areas that you've explored already and the areas that you can explore as part of the map. So
they did
like,
that in an interesting way.
and they do that in Jedi as well. And I want that in all games from now on, by the way. I hate having a map and you're just like, okay, well, I don't remember where I've been.
Well, Jedi did it in an interesting way where it was like they outright told you, and I think they had to, because the maps were really complicated.
Yeah.
To where so in a lot of Metroidvanias, they end up making you feel lost at some point.
Yeah.
Because the idea is they'll show you this area, and it's like, oh no, you can't get there yet. And then you have to remember, once I get this item, I can come back and make it through here.
Right.
But what they do is they're like, okay, it's red on the map if you can't get there yet. And then what is it? It turns green.
It turns yellow if it'll say unexplored.
Yeah, and then that means you can go back and go there.
Right. And I liked that Resident Evil 2 did that too, where like, most of it was just going from room to room and like running into a dead end, finding an item, thinking like, oh, maybe I can use it here, not being able to use it, and then being like, oh, well, I'm going to need this at some point. And then, it would still like the room would stay green, basically being like, you need to come back here at some point.
Right.
So that you would know like, okay, this room isn't just like dead to me now. And it did a good job in telling you like when your items weren't like when you could just get rid of them.
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up next is the whole thing where Resident Evil is all about resource management, like you said, and using that to build tension. But they're really kind in that like they don't want you to uselessly carry around items that like open doors and things, keys and
Yeah.
So as soon as you've used something, you're done. So like you have the heart key. As soon as you've opened all the heart doors, it'll exit out. So you go, oh, okay, I need to just drop this in the box so I don't carry it anymore.
Right, and that's important
Waste
because
space.
you might, in the previous game, you'd have the heart key and you'd open X number of heart doors and you'd be like, well, there might still be a heart door somewhere in the future, so you'd hold on to it and then just take up inventory space.
Yeah. And you are very limited in what you can carry. But before we're kind of going down the rabbit hole. The reason, another good reason that it should count is also because they changed like the game. The gameplay is wildly different. The camera's wildly different. I kind of almost feel like it's RE2 in name only.
Yeah, I can go with that. Because like the way that they do the limb damage and stuff like that felt very much like Dead Space to me.
Yes. I got serious Dead Space vibes.
Another reason why I really like this game this generation is that since playing it, I've been like way more into horror games, and so I went back and installed and started playing Dead Space 2 through again as well.
Those games are legit terrifying.
I love them. Like
so good.
I played through one, like 2 years ago because I hadn't played it, and then it was really hard for me to get because I had only played 2. So
one is a masterpiece.
It is really good. It's definitely shows its age.
Yeah.
Like 2 controls better, but it just sent me down this. It sent me down this path of like I want to play more horror games because like I don't know. There's just something about them. Like I don't think I'd played a horror game in a long time since I played RE2, and now it's just like I want to feel that. There's that like tension of like when Mr. X shows up for the first time and you're like crapping your pants. I needed it.
There's something special about horror games in the way they lend themselves. Like horror lends itself to the video game in a way that a lot of other genres, I don't know how to explain it. It's like there's something special about it. Like objectively. That like it just works.
Well, if you're watching a horror movie, it's like, okay, this is the scary thing. It's up to this person to either survive or not.
Right.
But with horror games, it's like it's up to me.
Right. And that automatically amps everything up.
Right.
So it just lends itself to the medium.
Is there another game that you would like to discuss?
So I don't think we can overlook talking about PUBG.
Should we just converge them into like
All
the battle royale genre at this point?
Okay, but that's my point. And why we have to talk about PUBG, even though I have very little experience, is because in the same way that the Soulsborne, we talked about that as a series, but like it having that influence over the industry, that's kind of why like PUBG started it all and set off this battle royale thing. Even though like Fortnite stole it and ran with that idea and became the powerhouse that it is, like PUBG started it all. And I think there's a serious case for calling that the game of the generation, despite not being as big as I think it deserves to be.
Yeah, because like I mean,
it influenced an entire generation.
I mean, we have the biggest multiplayer game ever, basically in like Call of Duty, basically saying like, we need to do this too, So when you can take the previous Juggernaut, when you can take the previous Juggernaut and make them change because everybody's clamoring for this thing that you're doing. I think that says a lot about what's actually. I don't have my glass. Hang on to that.
Producer Colin.
Producer Colin, can I have my glass, please, sir?
He wants some soju.
Thank you, sir. Producer Colin would also like some soju.
Oh, look at the.
There we go. Oh yeah, check here. Here we go. Let's shout it out. So we got a Sunhari yogurt soju, and it's tastes like creamsicle.
Yeah, that's really good.
It's delightful. Here, finish that off since you brought it. So I think that it says a lot that like you can make like the king of multiplayer change its whole thing to be about you. You know, and now Warzone's like, cheers. Warzone's like the biggest, you know, multiplayer game out there right now, and it wouldn't be Warzone without PUBG kind of like laying the groundwork. And it's just a good story because it's like just some random developer that picked up some random modder and was just like, we'll give you a chance to make this game, and then he made this game, and it just exploded into like an entire genre of the industry that people have copied and you know want to make their own thing. And Fortnite wouldn't have even made itself what it is if it wasn't like, this is popular, we need to do it.
Right.
And for me, PUBG is just so much better than Fortnite in a sense that like it's not arcadey. It's very much like the first couple months we played PUBG and we're like figuring it out. Like that was the other thing is like you didn't have anything telling you how to do things in PUBG. Like it was just like you gotta just figure it out. Like you want to know the controls. There's no tool tips. You go into the control settings and go through and see like what everything does, and you figure out how every gun works differently. And it was very much like just a hands off. You figure it out. And that's what kind of made it even more tense. It's like you're fighting against the game and the information it's giving you while also fighting against 100 people.
Yeah.
And like the realism aspect that it went for is like the sound and like the being able to like hide in tall grass and like hide in bushes and stuff like that, and like hide on roofs and like all that stuff. Just really like the tension and like. When you get down to like the last like 10 people in a round, like at the start of PUBG, when it was like a brand new thing, when you get to like the last 10 or so people, every time it was like heart poundingly tense and exhilarating. And it's one of those things that I don't think I'd experienced since I was like a little kid playing like the original Medal of Honor and stuff, like with my clan online and stuff.
Good one. Yeah.
So,
I can't really, like I said, I didn't really play PUBG. I really just felt that they deserved the shout out. And that I feel like it deserves Game of the Generation because it literally has launched an entire generation, like Fortnite, Apex Legends, Call of Duty,
Warzone,
Warzone,
Hyperscape,
so many,
all the failed ones too.
Yeah, so many games. I don't know how you can argue against that.
Like in a way, like you remember when in like the 360 generation where Call of Duty 4 was so popular.
Oh
that everybody wanted to make like a modern military multiplayer shooter.
It also launched the game that like probably should have gotten Game of the Generation that generation.
Right. It's like you can go back and see that generation and see the littered corpses of all the games that tried to do that.
Right.
And you can do the same thing this generation. And what that tells to me is that like it was such a phenomena that like people had to really stop and take notice. Like the whole industry just kind of like stopped and took notice of what was happening there and said like, we can't ignore this. I don't think that all of them necessarily needed to go, let's make our own too. Cause like that's not how things work. then and whenever PUBG got popular, everybody said that too. It was like we already saw this with with COD4, where everybody was like, let's make a Call of Duty clone, and then most of them didn't work.
Yeah.
It was basically always still
Battlefield's the only one that really
right.
managed to achieve something.
Right. And I guess you could say that this, now there's 3 big, battle royales in PUBG, Fortnite, and Warzone. And, back in the day it was just, COD and Battlefield. So like, I guess that's a nice thing, is that there's still, even though everybody tried to copy it and so many of them failed, there's still at least like a little bit more choice in where you get your battle royale.
Right. I will just side note, because I was just reminded of this. I actually last night, James and Hazel went to bed, and I was kind of just still awake, and so I was like, I kind of feel like playing something, and I haven't fired up the PS4 in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So I popped in Titanfall 2, and I have not played it on the new TV yet. Oh, yeah, dude. Not necessarily like it looks phenomenal, but like something about just playing an FPS on this giant screen.
Yeah.
It just felt so good.
Yeah.
It was awesome. And then you're just like the fluidity of the motion. I would almost want to make a case for Titanfall 2, but I don't feel like it. Well, okay. So the parkour is perfect. All of your wall running, you can hang, like wall hanging, everything that they did. They try calling in a Titan, the Titan fights, and then like if you take out a Titan while you're just like a little guy,
Yeah.
you're just running around, and you have your anti-Titan weapons, and you manage to dip and dodge around this giant thing that's like trying to stomp on you or cut you down with a sword, and you're just weaving in and out of the buildings, popping shots, and you take this giant mech down. You're like, ugh! Like there's not really a feeling in games quite like that.
Yeah. So I never played Titanfall 2, but I did play the original Titanfall. And yeah, I can concur. Like, there's no other game where you fight a giant robot and it comes down out of the sky, smashes into the ground, and it's like stories taller than you as your player character. And then you fight that thing while somebody else is controlling it.
Oh, yeah.
And, like...
They did it in a way that doesn't make you feel completely powerless, but it also like makes you appreciate the size of it, and it still manages to not be goofy.
Yeah.
Like a lot of games that try to pull off the giant mech thing, it's like goofy.
No, it's like they I think that they really leaned into like the mobility of the player versus the mobility of the Titan as the differentiating thing, where like the Titan has like so much more capability and like firepower. And it's just like does like devastating damage, but like the player, they give you these buildings, like you were saying, that you can weave in and out of. Like, my favorite memory of playing Titanfall was when I got into a fight with a dude who was chasing me. Like, I got into a fight with him. He called in his Titan. I turned and like tried to book it away from him, like go into these buildings. And he's like shooting missiles at me, trying to get me through the windows. And we're like looking. It's like you know when you watch a samurai movie, and they're running through the reeds.
Yep.
And they're running like and they're like trying to they're like attacking each other, but they're also like weaving in between the trees and stuff and like taking their shots. It felt like that, where like I'm trying to spot him through the windows, he's trying to hit me through the windows, and we're just like going through an entire apartment complex doing that. And like,
so good.
It is really good.
And like, you had me on a thought, and now I kind of lost it.
So the thing with Titanfall that people talk about though is the
Okay, so the other dynamic is that the fluidity with which you can get into the Titan and out of the Titan. So like, you're not always fighting a Titan that's manned by a person. They have the auto Titan or whatever, where it walks around on its own. So as a pilot, when you're like chasing someone down in the Titan and they run into a building and you're like, I can't, This guy's going to get away from you. So you launch out of the Titan and run in the building after him. And, like, the Titan's also, like, running along the building, starting to shoot at him. And it's just, like, it's done so well. That game deserves more popularity.
Yeah, it maybe it doesn't have like a home on the games of the generation on everybody's list, but I think that like I would call it definitely one of the most underrated games of the generation. No doubt, because not enough people played it. The online community wasn't really there like people thought it would be.
Yeah.
But anytime I read like a list of like great single player as well, people bring up Titanfall 2.
Oh yeah, they stepped up with Titanfall 2's campaign. The single player campaign, the story is amazing.
Yeah.
It's really well done.
The only
thing I'd say is that the Titan bosses were not challenging enough.
Okay.
That's my only criticism of the single player campaign. But okay, so that's my case. What's the next on your list?
Well, this is one we can both agree on. Horizon Zero Dawn.
Yes.
Thank you, Colin.
Thank you, Colin.
Horizon Zero Dawn is up there for me because and I don't hear what I'm saying here and take it as like, this game sucks. But I would compare it to something like I bought Ghost of Tsushima and was like very excited to play it. But there's something about that game where I played for like 5 hours and I haven't gone back to it at all. There's something that's not grabbing me there, where with Horizon, it's a very similar kind of thing where it's like an open world game and you're kind of going to regions and like clearing out corrupted zones, kind of like you go into regions and Ghost of Tsushima and clear out like the fog of war of like all the encampments and stuff like that. But there's just something about Horizon Zero Dawn over something like Ghost of Tsushima that like made me want to be in that world, made me want to explore every inch of the map. I really like the characters in Horizon Zero Dawn. The story is fantastic. And like Ghost of Tsushima is more like, it's kind of predictable. It's like, revenge story, kind of, samurai revenge story that's been done before. And maybe the answer of what sets it apart is just giant robot dinosaurs. Maybe that's it.
So that's another game where they did the robot combat, make you feel small, but also make you feel, they did that very well.
Yeah.
That you fight giant T-Rexes with laser beams on their backs, and like what part of that doesn't sell you? Like right there.
Yeah.
I don't know about games of a generation when we're stacking it against these other things, though, because we're talking about games that have had massive impact on the future of gaming. I think like a continuing impact beyond themselves, and I don't see that Horizon has really done that. Like, while it's a great, like, while I would have to put it, like, how often do we talk about it? I'd put it very high up in the games of all time. Obviously, I think it was my game of all time. But game of the generation, most influential, I don't know.
Well,
I don't think it makes that cut.
Let me make the argument then. Okay. Because for me, I can say that it was influential in that it showed me what Sony can do.
What Guerrilla can do.
Well, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Sony and Guerrilla, and by extent Sony, because Guerrilla was basically known as the Killzone guys, and all they did was make Halo killer games like Killzone, right? And that's all they ever did. They were shoehorned into making the same thing, and then they went out and decided that they wanted to do something different, and Sony said, you know what? Okay, you don't have to just be our Killzone house where we need a Killzone game and we need to compete with Halo. And so they let them go out and make their own open world RPG. And then they went out and made like one of the most beautiful games that I've ever seen, and just did a really good job at making an amazing open world game that sticks out from all these other open world games and like in like setting and what they do. And it's, it like Sony gave Guerrilla the room to breathe, to branch out, to do new things, to let themselves evolve as a studio. And we still have like on the Xbox side, we still have Microsoft trying to make Halo still and putting out dud after dud with this new team that they've basically contracted out as only making Halo games. And the next one that was supposed to come out on their new series of consoles, they're still trying to plug away with that same team, and now they have to delay the game out of launch. And it's just like, it shows me that like Sony is more willing to take risks with their own first party, and that they're not tied to the idea of like, we need to compete with Halo. We need to deliver this game to people on our system. And
I mean, my counter argument is that Sony can't shake itself out of this dark dystopian horror future, like single player story. That's like every game.
Spider-Man.
There you go.
One game.
Spider-Man, Joe, God of War, which is also on this list for me.
Okay, so let's just do it. Segue.
But before we move on, though, I will say that again, I think that you make a good point, and that maybe it's not a game of the generation. That Horizon's maybe not a game of the generation,
At least not under the rubric that we're using.
with some of the other ones.
Yeah.
Right. This is more of a personal kind of my call.
Like I did say, like it is a game of all time.
Mm-hmm.
It is my game of all time. But I don't think when we're talking about things that have influenced an entire industry, I don't think it falls there.
Okay, that's a fair point. God of War, I will say, is very similar to the argument that I can make with Horizon, where they kind of, it is an established franchise. It has the name, and it's associated with PlayStation as a brand. So, of course, them going back to it is understandable. It's kind of almost predictable. What's not predictable is the way that they decided to change it.
Dude, yeah.
And make it like they changed Kratos entirely. They made him, a dad, and like to have a kid, and like to make it, he actually has like feelings, and he's not just a cold killer.
They made him grow up.
Mm-hmm.
He went from being the kind of like the 20s punk, like, understand where I'm going with this. It's like the 18, 20-year-old punk rocker, everything sucks, anarchist type to like, I grew up like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really appreciate like how they did the whole one-shot game thing as well, where they didn't like. Joe's got to get some more of this ghost pepper donut here.
I'm craving a little.
So, I think that it's really impressive how they did the whole one-shot game thing, though, where like there's loading, but you can't really tell. They don't actually ever cut. We've got the Joe eating cam. They don't ever actually cut from the stuff that's going on screen to like a loading screen or anything like that. It's just like all like they decided that they wanted to do one continuous shot for this whole game, and I think that that's like very brave, and like just like again, it just points to like Sony. Like, yeah, they make like, very similar, tonal games, but like they let their teams do very different, radically different things within themselves and within the franchises that they're working in. So like, I think that it was like, you had to have taken a chance when somebody brought to you, the concept for PS4 God of War, when you were like, we want to make another God of War game, and then they brought this to you, and they're like, we want to make Kratos a sad dad, and we want to make the camera real close, and we don't want you to be like swinging blades of chaos around the entire time, and like and then they like change the tone, and like it's very somber and stuff like that. And I think that it takes a lot of guts from like Sony as a publisher to be like, this whole fan base that we have built up expects this certain thing from God of War, and we're just gonna let you like tell a more mature story with it. And once you get into it later in the game, it becomes like also an amazing combat game too, with all the things that you unlock and all the fights that are just these like combat rooms that you just approach and kind of like improvise how you want to face it and stuff like that. It was just fantastic.
I can't really speak to God of War too much. So I hear your argument, but how about we just jump into the next one?
Okay.
'Cause I don't really have too much to add to that. I know it is high up there because it's discussed a lot along the same lines that, like I said, Dark Souls 3, it's so talked about. And that's kind of where God of War also falls. It's a very talked about game. So the next one that I would mention is maybe along those same lines is Last of Us 2.
Okay.
While I'm reluctant to, under the rubric of influentialness, or under the rubric of influence, I would have to say it doesn't really fall in that list. Mm-hmm. But it does in a way, if you think about it, because the sheer, the game itself didn't really do anything different for the most part, like other than like small tweaks than the original. The reason I think it falls, what game was more talked about in the last year?
Right. Yeah, the hype around that was like through the roof, as it should be, because, freaking The Last of Us 1 was a game of a generation last generation.
Absolutely.
So to follow up that kind of game is a tall task.
And to nail it.
Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, a lot of people think that they did not nail it.
And
I disagree.
We've talked about it before. Like, I will okay, if you don't like the game for any reason other than gameplay, I can't believe you. I'll if you have an opinion about the content of the game and you don't like it, okay. Mm-hmm. I will see your argument, just own it. Mm-hmm. But if you're telling me there's something with gameplay about the game that you don't like, you're lying. It's the same game.
Yeah.
Like as far as how it plays. Mm-hmm. And it's really well done, and the story's really well done. I mean, the only real critique that I have of the game is, I mean, you're in a dystopian future with zombies around every corner. You fight your way through a horde of zombies in a building. You get to the basement, find a secret stash of hidden pot, and you're going to get high while something's around the corner going to eat you. Is a little bit. I don't think that I'd be doing that. Okay. You'd want to keep your wits about you. That's my only real criticism. Like, okay, come on. Really?
Like, I think that the criticism around Last of Us 2 is them like pointing out like, what did it do so drastically different over the last one, because people were expecting it to be some like groundbreakingly different thing from the first one.
Why would you expect that?
I don't know. I personally myself, I didn't want more than that. Like, I wanted it to just be more Last of Us, and what we got was more Last of Us. Although the gameplay is tweaked to where things are a little more fluid.
Right.
You can, Ellie is feels like less of a tank than Joel. Where she's, her dodging is like a new thing where that feels pretty cool, and they actually use it in the gameplay to where you need to dodge if you're in melee. And
it makes a lot of sense because you're controlling a smaller, more nimble female versus this, big guy. Mm-hmm. It makes sense that you have a little bit more mobility, and that they make you feel like you feel the tankishness of Joel, and then Ellie is.
Yeah, it's weird for me because like the things that some people would call like bog standard gameplay to me are like perfectly satisfying.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like, okay, I guess that as far as third person shooting action games, like it doesn't do like anything too out there, but it's like, it's still a satisfying, it's still satisfying gameplay.
But that's because even the original Last of Us, the focus wasn't so much on doing anything groundbreaking with what you do, like with controls or like gameplay. Mm-hmm. What they did was it is the story.
Yeah,
that's the point. And so that's all I expected was an amazing story, and that's what they delivered. Like it or not, you know, you might not like the content of the story, but it was a good story. It was well told.
Yeah, it's just one of those games that's like a better, a better whole product than any individual part.
Right. Right.
Like the gameplay to me is satisfying enough. The graphics are amazing. The acting in terms of like the story and the motion capture and the voice acting is all just so good. Mm-hmm. And I really think that what they did with like the narrative structure of it, where you play as, you know, Ellie and then you play as Abby, and then it's like the flip of their 3 days in Seattle, and you get to see, you know,
don't do too much.
Right. But you get to see how both of them have different, you know, outlooks on the events that throw them into conflict and their different motivations, and how you empathize with them. Like there are characters that die in the game, and some people are like, I didn't care about them at all, and it felt like they were just trying to make me feel something for these people so then they could take them away from me and like elicit this reaction. And I'm just like, I don't see that. I connected with these characters, every single one of them, in a way where I really enjoyed them. And so
I think that sounds to me like nitpicking because you want to find something you didn't like. That's what that sounds like to me, which you can do to anything. You can do that to any game.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, I think maybe there are games that rise above that, but like you could pick apart Horizon.
Mm-hmm.
You could pick apart. I don't think you could pick apart Hollow Knight. I really do think that game is just above. It's on another level, really.
It is really impeccable, yeah.
Yeah. But it just, I want to find something that I don't like about this. I want to have something critical to say. And because, like, at least with what you're talking about with the characters, like, oh, they just wanted me to feel something when they took these characters away. I mean, that's what any movie does.
Right.
Any, you know. And so if you're coming into the game and you look at everything that's happening critically, you won't develop that connection because you're spending all that time trying to think you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's more of a consequence of that. I'm not saying that they didn't genuinely feel that way, but I think that's why.
Well, and also, like, I don't understand because a lot of people complained about the length of the game, as like it's like double the length of the original Last of Us, and so it's like, man, this game's so long, but also like they wanted more time for them to develop the characters, and it's like, okay, so like you wanted a shorter game, but you also wanted more time for them to develop the characters. So which one is it? Like, you can't.
Getting attached to characters doesn't have anything to do with length of time devoted to them. Like the Joel and Ellie in the first game run into the brothers.
Yeah.
Does it count as spoiler?
No.
I don't remember.
Like 7 years.
Yeah, seriously. So I don't know. I think people agree that generally like 10 years is the line. So maybe I shouldn't, but
no, we're good. Spoiler alert if you haven't played the original Last of Us or watched any numerous media that spoils it already. But
yeah. Okay, so you at one point you find a couple of brothers. One's older, one's younger. They are brothers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you kind of hole up. You escape a bad situation, you hole up in this apartment, and like you form a bond with them pretty quickly. you've gone a long time in the game kind of alone.
Mm-hmm.
And so you get attached to them like pretty quickly, and they have this really good story. And then you wait, what is it, like you wake up in the morning or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and the one had gotten bit in the process and starts
Changing,
yeah.
and then the older brother has to kill the younger brother.
And it's super emotional, but you've only known these characters for like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But it's done in such a way that it is very impactful.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, for sure. And there's a lot of that in 2 with like characters like Manny and Jesse and stuff, where like you only interact with them for a short bit, but you, similar to like the brothers in the first game, you take them out, you play through. It's not just like, hey, here they are in cinematics, now go away. It's like you play through missions with them too. So it's like, I did rely on them even in the gameplay to like help me get through levels and stuff. And you have like they have like little back and forth banter and stuff that helps build out the characters too. And I don't know, it just feels like there's like a little bit of like, if you're cynical, and I'm not saying that I'm not cynical. I'm a cynical individual. But in terms of like just like putting myself away from just trying to poke holes and just like in letting it kind of like take me where it wants to go, I felt that the story and the characterization and all that stuff did exactly what it was trying to do. Do we want to do
How
anymore?
are we looking time wise? Out of curiosity.
72 minutes.
No way.
Okay.
Oh wow.
Well, I guess we should probably then just wind up wrapping it up. But is there any more games that you can think of that you want to list without going too far into detail? Just like, honorable, not even honorable mentions, just like other games that would be on this list if we had the time to just like continue getting into them.
I can't think of anything that I'd want to put against the list that we've already made. I want to narrow that down unless you have anything else you'd want to introduce that you think would compete.
Breath of the Wild.
Okay.
A game that I have never played, but I cannot ignore the massive group of people and just the general consensus that it's just almost like the perfect game. Yeah, exactly. It's like a perfect game. So, even though I haven't played it, I have to recognize it as a piece of art that has just like dominated discussion in terms of this entire generation since it came out.
I will give that a fair enough.
Okay.
I don't know about influence. As I haven't seen it influence any other part of the industry, really. And the game certainly had some flaws. I wouldn't say perfect, and I know that in the gaming industry, the word perfect doesn't mean perfect.
No, yeah, it gets tossed around a lot.
Yeah, it is a perfect game, at least by gaming standard. But like the so one of the things that Breath of the Wild does is like the weapon what do you call
Degradation.
it? Yeah, the weapon degradation. Your weapons break really, really quickly. But they also balance that out by giving you lots and lots of weapons.
Mm-hmm.
So you stumble across things really quickly, and it kind of, it's interesting because you have these really cool moments where you get in these fights and then your sword breaks. And I know this can be like critical on the other side, but I think it's actually really funny. And like you'll run off and like you get into these cool altercations. You're like, I gotta go grab this rock and I'll throw it at him just to stumble him for a minute, and then I'm gonna run and I'm gonna pick up a stick and I'm gonna beat him with it until I can run and grab something. And like it makes this really tense combat sometimes. And the enemies are actually fairly tough.
Mm-hmm.
So they kind of embraced every enemy is, I mean, as you gain better equipment, but the equipment breaks, the enemies get feel weaker.
Yeah.
You know, the bokoblins that you come across, and they're a joke if you have a really strong weapon, but like if all your weapons break and you have like a twig to fight it with, you can be easily torn apart.
Right.
And like when bombs blow off and like half your health disappears in a single hit. Yeah, they did a good job of making the enemies pretty tough and making you feel like you have to kind of work at it, and the combat is really evolved. The like everything feels really good in that game, and I think as a game it's definitely a game of all time. Is it a game of the generation in that we've seen its influence throughout the generation? I don't know.
One last game that I would throw in that would, I think, fall into our rubric is Overwatch. Because much like PUBG, for a couple of years after release, it was everybody wanted to make a hero shooter, class-based kind of. Everybody has abilities, stuff like that.
Overwatch is kind of an outgrowth of like League, though, isn't it? In a way,
It is kind of an offshoot. Yeah.
and TF, yeah. So it's kind of influenced from other side, from somewhere else, from previous generation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say that it deserves to be in this list because it did do like producer Colin said, it perfected the hero shooter. What would you call it? It's not really a MOBA. Is it?
It's like a hero arena shooter.
Yeah.
You go for objectives and stuff like that. Yeah.
Just
that it's so, and also that it's still just so popular, even today.
All this time later, and graphically it looks amazing. I love the different abilities. It's very creative. And
the cast of characters is super colorful and like fairly iconic. Like when we move on from this generation, we'll still, people will still look back and look at like Tracer and Winston and Roadhog and all the characters that are in it.
The Angel one,
Mercy.
Everybody loves Mercy.
Mercy's my bae.
Yeah, like
right?
that. I guess if somebody were to go back and be like, name me all the operators from Warzone. I don't know, but if somebody's like
Captain Price,
can you tell me the characters from Overwatch? I could go down the list,
Yeah.
So
Soap and Captain Price are the only two names that I remember.
Oh, there's the one from Black Ops 2 or the first Black Ops. I don't know.
See?
Yeah. Damn. Okay. Any other quick shout outs that you'd give?
Stop doing that. Sorry. I keep doing it. Sorry, Colin. None that I can really think of that I would have to put in there. So do we want to narrow this down?
Do we want to try to come to our definitive game of the generation?
I would like to come away from this with a game that we say is the game of the generation. This is one of the most influential games. And we've done basically all PS4 for the most part, other than Breath of the Wild,
and PUBG.
But what do we think is the most influential game?
I think it's got to be either PUBG or like Dark Souls.
I'm kind of leaning towards PUBG. It's not nearly, I think, on the popularity of Dark Souls, but the sheer impact to the industry, there's no denying. This entire generation has been influenced by PUBG, like it or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, I can go with that. I would agree, just on the thought that like Dark Souls 3, Bloodborne, Sekiro, they all are continuations of an idea that started in the previous generation with the original Dark Souls, and Demon Souls and stuff like that. But like even going into PS5, guess what a PS5 launch title is? Demon Souls. The Demon Souls remake. Like if you So maybe I won't take that. Maybe I'll say that.
But you have to figure that all of these games that have launched from PUBG are going to continue on. Like,
Fortnite, Warzone, they're going to
yeah,
be on
Warzone
PS5.
is going to keep going.
Yeah.
We're going to, these games are not going to stop anytime soon. Good or bad.
Yeah. I just think something like the Dark Souls structure has more legs moving forward than something like PUBG that people eventually could get tired of. Like, I could see people getting over battle royales, but I don't.
Oh,
think
I
that
think
could
it's already
see-
happening.
Yeah.
I'm already there.
So, that being said,
I will hear an argument for Dark Souls.
so even though Dark Souls started the previous generation or whatever, that it has carried on through this generation, been taken to so many different areas within even its own structure, and is now basically leading off the next generation. And people are still ravenous for more Souls games. People are still waiting for Elden Ring and like searching for every little bit of information they can get on Elden Ring.
Oh,
So
yes.
that would be my argument.
Okay.
Is that, it's still like, I don't think we're still at market saturation for things like Dark Souls either. And the things that are Dark Souls influenced, like that Lords of the Fallen game,
Yeah.
like people still recognize like the genuine article, or like whenever a game is actually doing it right versus somebody that's like just doing it wrong and trying to cash in.
Yeah, PUBG isn't really acknowledged in that same way, whereas everyone can call back to Dark Souls.
Well, if I go back and I play the original Dark Souls like today in 2020,
It still holds up.
it still holds up. If I go back and play PUBG versus something like Warzone, it feels more janky. It doesn't run as well. There's more issues with it. Like,
So,
I would say, yeah, just Soulsborne in general.
okay, so 1, 2, 3, and we'll both say what we think.
Okay.
And let's see what we say.
Like in terms of like our favorite one.
The final choice.
Okay.
What will be the game of the generation?
Okay. One,
1, 2, 3.
Barbie
Dark
Horse
Souls.
Adventure.
Oh man.
Dark Souls.
Yeah.
Dark Souls.
Dark Souls.
For
Okay.
sure. That is my pick. And damn it, am I ready to play Demon Souls?
Yes. And Elden Ring. Come on.
Let's go FromSoft. Get them to us, buddy.
So Dark Souls is our game of the generation. Thank you for sticking around through that discussion. That was completely ad-lib, so that was pretty cool.
Yeah. So I guess that's all for today. And remember to like and subscribe wherever you're listening. We would like to hear from you, so please comment on this video or send us an email at nonsensorypod@gmail.com or tweet us at nonsensory1. Also, we stream Tuesdays, 7:30 Eastern. Remember, 7:30 Eastern, Tuesday
We're
nights.
gonna pick up. If I may interject real quickly
Yes.
during the outro, we've been doing RE2, and we'd like to keep doing that. So long as that, I think there's still a poll up for what you can play.
Yes.
But we kind of want to run through RE2. We have had a couple of weeks where our schedules didn't work out and we didn't put anything up.
Yes.
But
This week, we'll be there.
Yeah,
We'll be there this week. With my new job, I have been ending up having to work nights.
Yeah.
So
And I've had a couple of rough weeks and the funky internet, and so we apologize for kind of if we let anyone down, but we're gonna be there. So tune in.
yes.
7:30 Eastern time. RE2 remake.
Yes, twitch.tv/nonsensory. And if you can please support us on Patreon, please do so at patreon.com/nonsensorypod. And last but not least, you can head over to our friends at Gaming Access Weekly at gamingaccessweekly.com and give them a look and give them your support as well, as they support us and we support them. And as always, we love you. Peace.
Be easy.